Wow. So, season 4, episode 18 of Vikings is entitled Revenge, and that's the perfect title for this episode. This episode of Vikings was so amazing on so many different levels, and the ending was just so gruesome it shocked me, but I'll try to keep my composure when giving this review and recap, but man, that was a stomach churner there at the end. So, the episode starts off, and Ube seats. One of the first things that happens is Ube seats Fitzig kissing Margareta, and he gets jealous, of course, as you can see, or at least that's what the viewers led to believe. Um, but later on, we figure out that Ube and even though Ube and Margareta get married, that he's willing to um, share with Fitzig, and it's interesting to see that aspect of their culture expressed. Of course, the openness with that. We also get to see the first human sacrifice on Vikings, which normally, or I thought would be the grossest part of this episode, but it wasn't. And gross is good when it comes to Vikings. Like, violence is great, and so the human sacrifice was pretty phenomenal. And at the same time, we got to see Bjorn and Astrid sort of get it on again, and so that was cool to see because they paralleled that with the sacrifice going on at the same time, and it's a really well done. There's some really well done scenes there, and I really did appreciate uh, how they did that, and it was crazy to see human sacrifice on TV and see everybody smile and Floki get that grin whenever the human sacrifice was done. But at this point, not a lot of stuff grosses out. I mean, whenever we saw the Blood Eagle, that was insane. That was insanely intense. But this human sacrifice wasn't nearly as bad as the Blood Eagle, I don't think. But it was still pretty awesome seeing a human sacrifice be done. Bjorn gave a speech to his brothers before he left. This is sort of important to the episode. He basically tells them all he's in charge, but of course you can see in Ivar's eyes that, when it comes to the invasion, Ivar may not listen to Bjorn all the time, and he's probably going to become the leader. Aethelwulf in this episode actually had a really powerful moment with Egbert. This episode being called Revenge, you wouldn't think that some of these English characters would have as much of a impact on the episode's emotional weight, but there was a scene with Aethelwulf and Egbert, and basically it's this amazing scene in which Aethelwulf tells Egbert, like, he's asking him if he even loves him, and they have this very emotional scene together, and really Egbert at the end says the reason he used Aethelwulf all these years, did all these awful things to him, was because how trustworthy he really is, but he couldn't even get himself to say that he loved his own son, and there's this very impactful moment. And I was really surprised because in an episode where it's so dark and so dreary, like not in a bad way, but in a way that, it's just the tone of the episode, it was kind of out of place, but at the same time still welcome to see that moment, that really emotionally strong moment between Aethelwulf and Egbert. Ayla had this confidence at the beginning in all the scenes with him in this episode, and it made the ending so much better. Ayla was basically talking to the priest and talking to his family. He says, "I'm not worried. God's on my side. These heathens will not be able to do anything." And when he actually gets on the battlefield, I love how they did this scene. Ayla basically sees a few of the Vikings, and he's like, "Oh, we got this, guys." And he leans over to the priest and says, "We have this, sort of in the bag." And then slowly but surely, more and more Vikings appear, and I loved that. Um, the one thing I will say about this episode that I was slightly disappointed in is we didn't actually get to see the battle ensue, but it looked like Ayla would have been slaughtered extremely quickly anyway, so I understand why they didn't do that. They're saving their budget for bigger battles, but that was really great to see because Ayla had this confidence about him. But basically, after Ayla says, "Oh, we're basically dead. They're going to destroy us." I don't even think he even says, "I don't even think God will help us now." And coming from Ayla, that's big. It cuts to him being dragged in the mud, and eventually them stopping at Ragnar's grave and basically saying, "Is this where our father died?" And it was. And after all of that, after Ivar drags him, after Ayla's defeated in battle, after Ivar drags him with his chariot, they finally get down to Ayla's punishment. Now, this is the part of the episode that just blew me away, and I didn't think Vikings could top itself, of course, with the Blood Eagle and with the human sacrifice and with things that had gruesome things that it had done in the past, but really the retribution and the revenge they got on Ayla and the torture they did to him was some of the most gruesome, involved some of the most gruesome scenes I've seen on television. So it starts off by Floki nailing him to a tree, which is bad, but it's nothing terrible. But then Bjorn starts cutting open his back like a blood eagle, but they can't even finish the blood eagle because Ayla dies. But we see him screaming in pain and agony, and Bjorn just cutting his back, and everybody grinning and blood spewing everywhere. And it's this very awesome scene. And we hate Ayla, so normally we feel for characters that die in such a terrible way on television. But with Ayla, I was I was horrified, but at the same time, I was really happy because I was just tired of his presence on this show. Not that it wasn't there for a reason, but I was really happy when they got the revenge, despite how gruesome it was. So they kept cutting away at his back, and eventually they get to the point where he dies before they can actually put his lungs over his shoulders. But they then, if that wasn't bad enough, this is the part that got me. They use Ayla's corpse. They stretch his skin between two trees, and they just have his corpse hanging there, and it gets this close-up of Ayla and his back slightly, or you could tell where they had cut into it to try to do the blood eagle, but you also just see him stretch, his back skin stretched out, and him hanging between two trees. And it's one of the most gross things I've ever seen. Like, this is one of the first moments on TV. Like, I've watched some gruesome TV. I've watched The Walking Dead, and I've watched through all of Vikings, so I've seen gruesome before, but this is one of the only times on television that I've ever almost thrown up at the sight of a character being dead and what they do with his corpse. So Ayla's death was the highlight of this episode by far. The human sacrifice, great. All the lead up, great. Bjorn's talk with his brothers, great. Aethelwulf and Eckbert's talk, phenomenal. But Ayla's death was so well done, and I just love this episode. So I'd have to give season 4, episode 18 of Vikings a solid 9.7 out of 10. I'm going to give it the same score I gave to the episode in which Ragnar dies, because that death and then this death are some of the most amazing deaths I've seen on television, obviously for different reasons, but what an episode. Revenge was great. Michael Hirst, great job. Props to you for writing this episode so wonderfully and directing it so wonderfully. And I can't wait to see what happens next week in the invasion, see Eckbert get what he deserves. But yeah, I'd have to give this episode a 9.7 out of 10. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Remember to like and subscribe for more. This has been Jonesy from Jonester TV, signing off.